let's have a chat with Rosie. Hi, Rosie. You're on the line. What would you like to talk about today?
Hey guys, I I'm coming in kind of unprepared because I just got home from work and I
That's okay.
just put on
We're not
and you
prepared
guys are like
either, so this works out well.
aw- awesome. That sounds
You're
great.
good.
So I just had like this general question for you guys as atheists. Have you guys ever had an honest discussion with a Christian where they are responding honestly? Also, because I get the feeling mostly, usually, that you guys, when you come on, you guys are presenting your most honest selves and your perspectives on atheism. But the Christian side seems to always kind of stop short of even just basic consideration. Like, as atheists, we're kind of asked to consider, what if this God exists? What if the resurrection happened, etc. But, you ask a Christian, like, what if there is no God? And they'll like short circuit. And I don't know, think like it's some kind of they probably think it's a sin to consider that God doesn't exist. But it's kind of hard to have a real honest discussion with anyone if they won't even consider your perspective.
Well, I agree with that. I think that's true. It's hard to have an honest discussion with anybody who won't consider your perspective.
For me, I'm sensing in whatever answer I would want to give, I would want to make a difference between honesty, like straight up being truthful, versus
Right.
intellectual honesty, which maybe is where you're drawing a line because intellectually honest, we can, of course, lie to ourselves, right? And we can selectively not think about certain things if we don't want to, or we can straight out not consider other people's perspective on things. Those are all things we can do, which are maybe not intellectually honest, but if we were conveying them, we would still be being honest. That is our current view on something, or that is our opinion, or that is how we feel. So is that a meaningful distinction to you?
I had to unmute you. Sorry, Rosie. You were having some background noise, so I muted you while Paul was talking. You're unmuted now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that is actually a very good distinction because so much of Christianity is based on feeling, and it you can't even get beyond that feeling to intellectually consider all these different aspects of your own religion. Then it can't really go anywhere. I think.
I think it's also a bit like a firmly entrenched identity too. Like it's not just what you think about something, it's to a certain degree who you are. And when something is
Hmm.
so tied to your identity, it's very different. Like you're consistently attempting to reconcile because it's not just that you found out a new fact about something mundane. If you find out a new or contradictory fact about something that you see as like an inherent part of yourself, like that has additional repercussions. So you're invested in retention to a degree that's not the same for other aspects of things that you believe.
Hmm.
When I was a Christian, I definitely would have said all these things that apologists would have said, and I would have been incredibly genuine about them. So like it wasn't that many years ago that I can remember doing that. So again, if I can introspect it all about myself, I can know that I was well meaning about it. But also, I think both Shannon and I would say, I deal with apologists a lot. I watch them all day long. Ascribing motive, I don't find to be a particularly helpful activity because it's actually more helpful if I just take them at their word. Like if they're being dishonest about what they're presenting, that's kind of on them. And it almost doesn't matter to my response, whether they are being honest or not honest. I'm just having the conversation that I'm in right now. And I kind of have to take them at their word. And if they're being duplicitous about something, so be it. I still have to, for the sake of the audience or for the sake around me, address the points as best I can. So that's kind of how I deal with that. I don't even think about it anymore.
Yeah. Does that
I do.
resonate with you at all?
It does. It really does. Yeah, I'm very curious all the time about how you guys approach the callers and because I know you guys do this a lot. So it must when you guys explode. Like I also have a really good time when Shannon goes crazy. But
Love
I
jokes.
imagine that like what every time it happens is like frustrating and it takes a lot out of you. But I mean in general, people in general, like as an atheist, to have to like constantly be your basically your best present your best self
Mhm.
and engage regardless of what is coming back at you.
Yeah, like it can be difficult because I always want to put my best foot forward, but I definitely have a bitch switch when it comes to like
Ah,
bigotry and erosion of people's rights. Like,
yeah.
and the shitty thing is that in those instances, there's almost this additional level of expectation that you need to have this degree of patience, because otherwise, if you don't approach the person the right way, then basically people will justify you losing your rights. If you
They
don't
want to.
approach them the appropriate way, from what an outsider who doesn't have to deal with that being a threat to them perceives as the appropriate way, but does have skin in the game when it comes to things like voting and contributing to the public consciousness. So you're constantly having to weigh, what is enough? And what does it for me is whether or not, like, I kind of make a personal assessment about whether or not the person is engaging with me in good faith. Like, if somebody's legitimately curious and we can have a conversation about it, and they're just like, they're asking questions because they want to know the answers to those questions and they want to see my perspective, then I'll usually utilize my patience. If I feel like somebody is having this conversation because they want to be the one that owns Shannon Q on abortion, or they want to be the one who owns Shannon Q on feminist issues, or they want to be the one who owns Shannon Q on LGBTQ rights, I'm not going to give them that sound clip. I'm going to give them a sound clip where I tell them that they're ridiculous. And it's very unequivocally the case that, like, you're not going to be able to use this to, like, perch yourself up, because they do that. Like, Paul and I listened in bed the other night to two dudes that had called into a call-in show to talk about something, and they had a debate back and forth about whether or not either one of them would fuck me. Like, that was just a thing
Jesus
that they
Christ.
did. And I have to just be like, okay, we're going to compartmentalize this. We're just going to eat this, because if I have to if I deal with it the way that I want to deal with it, then I'm potentially going to cede ground that has an impact.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if you're somebody who's I'm a cis woman who's white. I mean, I'm not straight, but I'm a cis woman who's white, who's in a heteropassing relationship. I have more privileges than a lot of people do. But there's not a lot of atheist women roaming around doing what I do. So that comes with its own set of baggage as well. Like, because if I don't do a good job, then people can point to me and say that that's the reason that somebody else doesn't deserve a platform. That's the reason that women shouldn't blah, 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 blah. Right. So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to traverse. I'm
Cool.
not sure if that was
Can I
helpful
sneak-
or just a rant.
That is very helpful, because I'm a huge fan of both of you guys. And it's just cool to know your thought process. And it was cool learning you guys live together. Everyone was like, wow, that's
Oh, yeah.
so you guys
It always amazes me.
No,
Yeah,
can I sneak in one more random question? It actually has nothing to do with this,
super quick. Sure.
but concerns Paulogia, because I think he's kind of not. I don't know if you're an expert on this, but I know I've seen some of your videos. But I want to read the Bible because I've never read it, and I don't actually know a lot of the stories. Really, I just know kind of like through osmosis, through cultural osmosis, a bunch of the stories. But I know there's like tons more, but the fucking King James version is atrocious. It's so hard to read, so much begatting in that fucking book. And I was just wondering if you had a recommendation for a Bible for an atheist to read.
So he's trying to wrangle a dog that's barking at a window right now. He's coming back. Right?
So I'm totally out of frame because I'm petting a puppy at the same time.
It's all good.
So the question was, was it about what? And I missed a little bit there because my dog is barking. So it was about what version to read?
Yeah, because I really don't like the King James version. It's just I just can't I can barely make it to the 6th day.
Yeah, no. Yeah. So what I would say is it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is my goal is often that mixed thing. Like I want the best one that at least attempts to be most accurate to the text, but also be clear. And so it's always difficult when you're translating something, right? Are you translating, like if you're translating from English, it's raining cats and dogs, to another language where they don't use that phrase? Are you translating, do you literally translate the words cats and dogs, or do you, anyway, the long story short, I really like the NIV because that's the one that I, as a youth, once I left King James, that was the one I felt was the best thing to do. And I memorized a lot of scripture in NIV. It's called NIV, New International Version.
Okay.
But the one that seems to be most popular these days among apologists seems to be the ESV, the English Standard Version. I think because they would say the NIV has gone a little bit woke. The newer versions of the NIV. So I like NIV.
I don't want the Christian perspective on which Bible I should read, ironically.
Yeah,
I really don't.
but the NIV, so what they did is actually they went and they took a lot of the verses that were not gender specific in the Greek, but traditionally have been translated as he. And they kind of went back and changed them to they and like to more gender neutral language, which is more accurate to the Greek. But
Okay.
of course, if you're just an English speaking Bible reader, well, the NIV's gone woke about, that stuff. So, but ESV seems to be the one, like Answers in Genesis will usually use ESV. And I think a lot of the big ministries do. So I feel like those are the two ones that do their best to give you a clear meaning of the intention, but also really do try and stick to the best possible sources. Like some of them, like The Message and some of these others are so loosely translated that they almost don't care about the original. So those are the two I recommend for best balance. I guess if that's helpful.
That is very, very helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. Good questions, Rosie.